In the last month, Joe Biden has proposed the strongest immigration bill that any Democrat in history has ever supported. Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill negotiated it together, and the far right wing of the Republican Party said, wait, let me finish, Kayleigh.
He dismantled Trump's immigration policy, 94 executive actions.
Let me finish what I'm saying.
It's very easy. I have one here. I'll loan it to the president. Pick up the pen, take executive action. A girl is dead.
It's just the most compelling TV. This is how a democracy should function. Two people yelling over each other trying to score points for social media. But anyway, the first woman in that clip on Outnumbered was trying to make the case that with Fox focusing so much on immigration and the country now fired up because, well, the media's been talking about immigration 23 out of 24 hours a day for the last 6 months. So sure, they're worked up that maybe the Republicans should have passed the border security bill. But Fox is not going to let her score points here. They smell blood in the water, and it has to do with the murder of 22-year-old Laken Riley. Before we continue with the story, we depend on members to keep on going. Don't wait. Click join now on YouTube. So the suspect of that murder has now been identified, 26-year-old Jose Ibarra, who crossed apparently illegally in the United States back in 2022. So the idea here is a migrant crossed illegally into the country, had at one point been arrested and released, and then committed a tragic and horrific murder. And as a result of that, now Joe Biden murdered this girl. That is the point that Fox is in the process of making, and they're going to make, I'm gonna say 1,000 times over the next 3 days. I would throw out a counterpoint, which is this is an absolutely horrific, unimaginable murder. It is terrible that anything happened that could have led to this. But what exactly is what is the idea here? That you should do whatever the Republicans want on the border as soon as a single crime is committed by a migrant? Like that's not, obviously they're not gonna articulate that as the logic here, but that is the logic that underlies their position. I mean, a horrific murder does not in any way change the fact that that migrants in general commit levels of crime at lower rates than native-born citizens. That remains true, despite the fact that Fox would never acknowledge that. And at the same time, as the woman in the clip pointed out, if it is so horrible that migrants cross the border and then commit terrible acts, and that's the thing that you're genuinely really angry about, then why were you cheerleading the fact that the Republicans blocked that border security bill? Like they think they can score points off of this, and they're entitled to try. That's what punditry is. But they're doing that after saying you don't need to pass anything on the border for like a year. So during that period between now and when Donald Trump becomes president and passes some better border security bill, even though this one was already written to the interests of a right-wing audience, how many other people are gonna cross the border? How many other rapes and murders and grand theft autos are gonna happen? Is that then going to be Donald Trump's fault? I mean, he's the guy that advocated for the bill to not be passed. So I'm just saying, like, if you're going to make this sort of argument, could we try to introduce a little bit of consistency? I understand this is cable news, so I guess the answer is no. But Danielle, it would be nice. What do you think?
I mean, I think that it's absolutely insane that Republicans are trying to get a win on the fact that the only reason that they torpedoed this bipartisan immigration bill was because Donald Trump didn't want Joe Biden to have a win, right? Like they don't actually care about what is happening with the border. They don't care what is happening with migrants, because if they did, then Donald Trump and the Republicans could have used this as a play, right? Like, we actually will come to the table, even though we know that that is BS, that they don't ever come to the table, that this has been their mode of operation, that every time we say, oh, operate in good faith, they go ahead and torpedo things when Donald Trump points and says, that's the target, blow it up. And so I think that Republicans should have passed the bipartisan bill, been able to say, we are working for the American people, even though we know largely that is a lie. And they would have had a good talking point, but instead they don't. And so for Democrats, they gave them a really big, I think, a really big narrative and messaging win if they do it correctly, which is that we care about the border. We want an immigration plan. We came to the table, we had one, and Republicans in the House, they blew it up. So Do you want this party that isn't really about security and safety? Or do you want the party that is willing to come to the table and negotiate? And by the way, it was a crap bill anyway, because they were giving Republicans everything that they wanted, right? So there wasn't really a middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I agree. They have to try to message this, as best they can, but it's going to be very difficult for a lot of reasons. They don't need on the right to be consistent or make any sense, because they're not even hiding that they killed this thing for political opportunism, like to stop Biden from getting a win. Trump has been very clear about that. Other Republicans have been very clear in their statements that this was about hurting Biden. So obviously, if they think that this bill would have stopped some murderers from coming across the border, and then they do come across the border and they kill people that could have been stopped, but the Republicans would rather hurt Biden. That is just indisputable at this point. But it's not going to reach the right, because our country, it makes me think of Battlestar Galactica. How there are these people that have this programming baked inside of them that when they hear this particular song, they're activated. The sleeper cell is activated. And that is so many Americans. They are so ready to be terrified of black and brown people. They're just waiting to hear the song, and then they snap into action. They're not analyzing data. They're not going to the border and looking at the situation there. They have no idea about the comparative crime rates. The reason Fox goes to this well every election cycle is because they know it works, because it shuts down the part of people's brain that can actually think, can reason, and instead gets people to be terrified. Even if you are terrified, it makes no sense to support the right, who is just going to get you scared and then advocate for nothing to be done.